Today is day 5 of working for Elon Musk, and today's topic, the area of work, is just encouragement for him as a person, not in respect to any of his businesses, but just general encouragement. And what's the form of encouragement? I love you. That's the encouragement for Elon Musk. Hopefully that's encouraging. I don't know. But day 5, working for Elon Musk, it's general encouragement. I love you. As a quick note, do you like my shirt? As a quick note, this is a really cool shirt. A design competition would be really fun. It has the perfect combination of interesting elements and blank space. Like, there's a lot you could do with like the car and the space guy and the earth and like the background. I'm not sure how I feel about the fringe. It was my first time doing it. I wasn't planning on modifying it when I ordered it. Maybe I would have ordered duplicates, but it took a risk. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think it looks better when I stand up, but yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the fringe. I feel like Jumanji, when he comes back and Robin Williams has shaved and the girl's like, nice hack job. He's like, it's my first time shaving. Give me a break. This was my first time. I don't know if I did it right. I don't know if I would do it again, but I took a risk. Yeah, I do think it is the perfect combination of having interesting elements and blank space. So if you had a design competition, I think that'd be a lot of fun. And I thought of the design competition thing from this shirt, so I haven't really considered other shirts. So when I say like this has the perfect combination of interesting elements and blank space, I think that's true. It is perfect, but I also haven't considered other shirts because the idea came from this shirt, and so it's the only one that I've considered. So it's currently the most perfect to have like a design competition. I don't want to say what my other ideas would have been, but there's like a lot of other stuff that I would have done to it if I had all my supplies and the time, and then it was, so this is just what I did so far. But I think the stars are cool. Yep, you would just need to add the onesie option. So with your kids' shirts, you have the kids' shirt and you have a SpaceX onesie. You just need the onesie of this one. That would be a lot of fun if you had a design competition. But back to today's work. Well, how did I get here? So it started from this interview where she made the comment how people loathe you and that people hate you. And I thought this could be unbalanced and unjust treatment towards Elon, with the potential of leaving Elon sorrowful and discouraged. So during this interview, she was saying how people loathe you, how people hate you, and I thought that was unjust. So, yeah. And then, leaving it as it is, well, I could see how it has the potential to leave you discouraged and sorrowful, thinking everyone or a multitude of people loathe you or hate you. So that I'm not guilty of neglecting justice. I don't want to neglect the weightier matters of the law and neglect justice. Well, I can't change how others feel about Elon, and hating Elon's haters doesn't help Elon. So I'm going to attempt to restore justice and balance the scales according to my means. So I think that treatment was unjust. I don't want to neglect justice, neglect the weightier matters of the law. So I'm going to try to be just and balance the scales. And I'm going to do that by testifying of my feelings towards Elon. Feelings of love to balance out unjust hate. I can't take away the hate. But I could pour love. So, yep. Restore justice by providing of my own resources. Pouring out my heart and soul openly in the presence of all. Confessing my undying love for a man I've never met in person. Yeah. God either renders a just wage or a generous wage. And I don't know how much hate you've received, and I don't know how much love you would need to receive in order to balance it out, to make it just. But I either have to hit the mark or go over. So this is what you get. Justice for Elon. If people think this is inappropriate, well, just listen to my frickin' PowerPoint, and then you can tell me if my feelings are inappropriate, if me confessing my feelings is inappropriate, or the way in which I confess my feelings is inappropriate. Is it inappropriate good or inappropriate evil? You have to be frickin' clear, okay? Okay. From whom did I draw courage to do this? Taylor Allison Swift. God bless you. Thank you for your vulnerability and honesty in your lyrics. When I think through her song lyrics, I'm like, you know what? That takes a lot of courage to like openly confess her feelings towards these men in relationships where it didn't work out. And this is from Down Bad, 'cause fuck it, I was in love. So fuck you if I can't have us. Like I was in love. I loved that man and it was not reciprocated, but fuck it, I was in love. And I want to be like Taylor. I don't want to ever stop being in love. So fuck it. If I'm in love, I'm going to tell the fucking man that I love him. Here's another one. I can do it with a broken heart. I'm so obsessed with him, but he avoids me like the plague. So here it's like she's confessing not only her feelings, but also how they were met with opposed feelings. She's not just openly confessing like the love that she has towards someone, but she's also making known like on the other end that person had like a negative attraction towards her. He avoided her like the plague. So I think that just adds to like if that was humiliating for her to do, to confess that she loved these people, well, I think it would be more humiliating on her end to know like the differential. Yeah, I had like all of this positive attraction and love and obsession towards this person, and he had like the same magnitude but negative. He avoided me. He was opposed. He did not, it wasn't neutral. He was like negative attracted. He was opposed to her. So I think her and her lyrics like that and being willing to speak of that, well, I think that took courage. So that's where I took courage from, is Taylor Swift's example. She didn't die. So I don't think I'll die either if I confess these things in the presence of all. Side note, also from that interview, I saw this quote from Elon: "My partner is half Indian." I didn't know. I don't know what, you can only Google so much. I didn't know you had an official partner in title. I thought you were relationally free, as I am. Knowing you have a partner is a hindrance for me in regards to being interested in a romantic relationship. I don't know who's taken or who's free. I'm acting in accord with my revealed knowledge. If you try to play it safe and you just assume, or it's like you have to wait until like you're sure that someone's single before you act, well, that could, keep someone from living their life. So I don't know what you have going on. But prior to having knowledge of your partner, I didn't have any romantic hindrances. But if you had like a partner and it was like a romance thing, well, that would be a hindrance for me in regards to like a romantic relationship. But prior to knowing that, I didn't have any hindrances in regarding like romance. Age, appearance, religion, none of those things was a hindrance for me. And in regards to religion, well, true worship isn't known by having the right combination of letters. There is no combination of letters that can contain the substance of God's name. So, kind of like how you say, you value the substance of goodness. It's like I value the substance of godliness, and goodness comes, I have no good apart from you. If someone contains goodness, well, that is of God. The origin and source of goodness is God. So if someone contains goodness in the inner man, well, that came from God. So, yeah. Also, I don't know what the term partner entails, nor ways in which that agreement may have you restricted. I don't know what partner means, to what degree you might be restricted to that partnership or free to pursue other relationships. I don't know what that means. So that's why I'm going to keep doing this. I'm also doing it for me, conquering my fears. People can have, I'll make my point later. Another side note, for Elon or for anyone, if my outstanding marriage certificate and pending divorce is a cause of confusion or a stumbling block, there are multiple reasons for why my conscience isn't bound to it. One reason, to me, I think if a man files a petition for divorce, that's the equivalent of a man giving his wife a certificate of divorce and sending her away. That's what Jesus said. Let him give her, a certificate of divorce and send her away. So I think if a man files a petition for a divorce, I think that's the equivalent. I think the legal processing was different back then than it is today, and now it's like processing that paperwork. There's a lot of steps to it. So in my mind, we are divorced for multiple different reasons. The most recent one is that he filed a petition for divorce, and I think that's the equivalent of him giving me a certificate of divorce. So, but John 7, verses 50 through 51 from Nicodemus, our law does not judge the person unless it first hears from him and knows what he is doing, does it? So I know, if people judge according to appearances, it might look a certain way, but, God looks at the heart. So if the outstanding marriage certificate is a source of confusion or a stumbling block, seek more information regarding that. So why do I love Elon? Well, it has to do with this interview you had with Don Lemon. So I first saw this interview in a hospital room postpartum after having Barney. That was March 2024. And in this interview, I hated seeing Don weaponize everything he could, including the medication that helped you, that you were taking that, kind of helped you work more efficiently or whatever it did for you. It's like everything is leverage for war. I just fucking hate it. So, and it's like I could see the elements of reactive abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. It's like they want to provoke you into a certain reaction. So now it's like, Elon got angry, da 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 da, to make it look like you're the problem. And like all of these forms of abuse, it's like all forms of violence and war on empaths, typically, people who feel. So I hated seeing that. To me, your participation in this interview is the equivalent of being on the front lines in battle, volunteering yourself to sacrifice and bleed. Emotional abuse versus like physical abuse, like emotional abuse can hurt a lot worse. So people who don't think emotional abuse is painful and brings acute suffering and pain, well, you're probably calloused and unfeeling. So these things are hurtful. So yeah, and painful. So I see it as you being on the front lines in battle, willing to sacrifice and bleed, shed blood. Same with buying X. You're willing to bleed money. You're willing to, like, money, I mean, that's what people work to earn money. People use money to buy things they need for life. So if you're willing to pour out a whole bunch of money, well, that's like you bleeding out. You're willing to, bleed out money, don't advertise. You value free speech enough that you're willing to bleed money. So I liked this quote that you said at the end. The way you're phrasing your questions, I think, is not cogent. I really liked that quote at the end. I think when I first watched it, it was so helpful for me because it's like you were able to speak to what I was also experiencing, where it's like I get caught up in like these mental games, and for you to call out the issue was with their questions, that was really helpful for me. That's like, oh, he also has this awareness that the problems are their questions. So that was helpful for me. I loved that quote, and past tense and current. And I think it is a true statement if one were to say Rebecca was quoting Elon before she was quoting Jesus, depending on the perspective and in what sense, they said that. But I think that's a true statement, that I was quoting Elon before I was quoting Jesus. Side note, dear Zuckerberg, well, Elon has set a new standard. If he's willing to go to battle, get in the ring with Don Lemon to fight for us and bleed, well, you should follow through with the fighting match against Elon, proving your love to your subscribers and that you're willing to bleed and risk death for our sakes. So if Elon is willing to fight Don Lemon in like this psychological warfare and bleed out and sacrifice himself for us to prove his love for humanity, well, Zuckerberg, you should at least be willing to follow through with your proposal to fight Elon and get in the ring, maybe with protective gear on, and prove your love towards us and that you're willing to bleed out and get beat by Elon for your subscribers. So, in respects to spiritual warfare, that quote, your questions aren't cogent, I said that a lot. The people I said it to verbally aren't really reliable witnesses. And now if you ask them questions about the past, they don't remember. They don't remember a lot of stuff. So I did say it to people verbally, but I also have a text example I'm going to include. But then later, quotes like this from Elon, your questions aren't cogent. Later I would say stuff like here with Jesus, if I have spoken wrongly, testify of the wrong. But if rightly, why do you strike me? Where it's like, he's asking, why do you question me? Question those who have heard what I spoke to them. And then they struck him. Is that the way you answer the high priest? Like, that answer was wrong. Jesus is saying, like, question those who heard my teachings. They know what I said. And then it's like, they strike him. It's like, is that the way you answer? It's like, what was wrong with his answer? If I have spoken wrongly, testify of the wrong. But if rightly, why do you strike me? So then I started, quoting Jesus a lot. And that was one of his quotes. So here's an example of when I use the your questions aren't cogent quote, and it has to do, it's at the end of this conversation, but I think the conversation is really funny, so I wanted to include it. And so this is a conversation I had with Tim. He is a SpaceX employee, that's why I don't have his last name. And this is from January of 2025. So at the end, I quote you in your cogent stuff, but the whole conversation's funny, I think. So I tell him, you're big on names. Rebecca means to tie or bind. I'm going to tie together that which was torn apart. This was in reference of me inviting him to the congregation I was attending at the time, because me and Tim started off at the same congregation, and then Tim is now more on the East Coast, and I was in Orlando, so I was telling him to come back, and I'm saying I'm going to get the band back together. And then Tim responded, yes, I can't believe that you remember so much about me, what I've said and all. He's big on names, so I had a Sphinx and I named her Pearl, and his son's first daughter they named Margaret, which means pearl. So he's big on names, so it's like he knows these things. Like, oh, you guys have the same name, Margaret and Pearl. So yeah, I just remember that about Tim. And he can't believe it. So I say, yes, I have a great memory. The Lord is using it. I just thought everyone else had memory problems. Okay, I didn't know. How do you judge whether someone has a great memory or someone has memory problems? I don't know. Tim says what he says. And then I quote something that I remember Tim also saying. I saw a picture of Jesus in my mind, and my first thought was, I don't want to offend him. That's something that Tim said in his testimony about when he was saved. And then I say, I'm just an extension of Jesus. I remember because he sees. So if I'm remembering all these things about Tim, I think it's because, God sees. Tim says he is the God who sees. The spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the innermost parts. And then talk about Nathaniel. Tim says that. Which I don't think I realized what you were saying, Tim, at the time. This is what he said to Nathaniel when Jesus looks at Nathaniel and he says, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit. I don't think I understood that connection at the time. I know I hearted both, but I don't think that connection was clear, what you were saying. And then Tim says, I'm not crazy. I don't know if he's crazy or not. The only thing I could think to say is that people think I'm crazy. You are. If I am, I am. For Christ's sake. And then I said, all this reading has driven me mad. That's a quote about Paul. He was doing vacation stuff and he wasn't able to visit. So that's why he said, after this month, I'll be able to do whatever I want. Then I said, do you think Trump and Elon are funny? More respect towards Elon. I capitalized his name, but not Trump's. Do you think Trump and Elon are funny? Tim said that, and then I shared this TikTok. And the TikTok was talking about Trump and your activity, Elon, on Twitter. Or maybe this was like Truth Social, whatever. But it was in regards to this post. What Trump posted, United States. And then what Justin Trudeau said, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from being each other's biggest trade and security partner. Like, what just, like, that couldn't happen if we did become one country. And then Elon's response, girl, you're not the governor of Canada anymore, so it doesn't matter what you say. It was just really funny. That TikTok on your guys' freaking... Yeah. This is hilarious. You're not the governor of Canada. Girl. So then Tim responds, you forget where I work. SpaceX is an enigma. And then I said, can you convince me of flat Earth? I want to be fully invested. And Tim says, only if you want me to. I said, I do. And I know you can do it. Do you have an identical twin born 20 years before you? I'd like to meet her. I said, Anya is still single. Not my twin, though. And then I said, the closest thing I have to a twin in a personality sense is, unfortunately, your son. So, side note, I know Tim because I dated his son. He is in my phone as Tim Dad and then his last name because his son shares his name and I didn't want to send a text to the wrong Tim when we were dating. Tim is too old for me. Immediately no. Elon is not too old for me. Tim is too old for me. Elon's not. They could be the same age, but there's a difference. Tim would be immediately no. No, Tim, you're too old. But that's not how I feel about Elon, and that's just how it is. Elon's not too old, but Tim is. I think it's because that relationship's already established with Tim, where it's like, I can't do it. He is really funny though. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I think I was just trying to like distract myself from my situation, so I would just have like all of these like new interests, and I would like cycle through them. It'd be like, okay, flat earth, that's me now. I want to be fully invested. Probably just to like get my mind off my circumstance and to like not think about my situation and just be interested in other stuff. And then Tim responds with his like, I don't know, narcissistic, playing the victim stuff about his divorce. When two women leave you after 16 years, you've got to wonder. I said, I'm sure they told you their reasons. Da-da-da-da-da. There's always two sides. By the way, what about their sin? What about their sin? I'm in a text thread with you. Da-da-da-da-da. So then, here's the cogent quote. My only point is, you've got to wonder isn't completely cogent. I don't think you have to wonder. You probably know their reasons. Whether the reasons are valid or not, someone else can be the judge. So there's evidence of me, quoting you. Your statements aren't cogent. Your question isn't cogent. You've got to wonder. It's not cogent. They probably told you their reasons why they left you, Tim. I don't know. So, yeah, it was fun to say. Your questions aren't cogent. Your questions aren't cogent. So back to fight for, free speech. I did not have freedom of speech. There was a lot of coercive control and conditioning, and it was in the form of like covert punishing responses. So if I would say something, it would be like a punishment, but it would be like covertly of, like conditioning so that I don't speak. And it eventually equated to speaking equals pain. Speaking anything. Communicating how I feel, what's hurting, what I need. Communicating anything about me was just pain. 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 And speaking, it's like not just in the form of audible words, but also how I express those words. Why that tone? Why you seem angry? Why are you a mess? Why are you crying? You're too loud. So not just like the words I speak, but how I express those words. And then the image I put forth, what I wear, what I look like, what my style, We're always speaking, we're always proclaiming. You can know someone by their apparel, what they do, their deeds. There are multiple ways in which people speak. There are multiple ways in which God speaks. So the image I put forth, the works I do, and the interests I have, I couldn't speak. I couldn't do. I couldn't bless people. I couldn't do good. I couldn't share. I couldn't hand out my stickers. I couldn't hand out my friendship bracelets. I couldn't hand out my encouragement cards. I couldn't make cookies. I couldn't bless people. I couldn't be godly. I couldn't speak. I couldn't exist. I couldn't live and be myself and do what comes natural for me to want to do without pain. So I did not have the freedom to exist or the freedom to live. I did not have the freedom to express myself, and I did not have the freedom to be known. I didn't have the freedom to be me, and I didn't have the freedom to do what comes naturally to me so that other people could know me. I couldn't express myself. I couldn't be myself naturally without receiving pain of some kind. And it's like you can't be known. If you're not yourself, you can't be known. So it's like I didn't have the freedom to live, the freedom to speak, the freedom to express myself, or the freedom to be known by others. So more on, quick side note regarding, fight for free speech. I mentioned it here in an open letter to the religious leaders in Jesus' day. Regardless of government regulations, if you You do not have freedom of speech if you fear man or fear death. And quoted John 12. They were not confessing him for fear that they would be put out of the synagogue, for they loved the approval of men rather than the approval of God. So regardless of government regulations in regards to speech, well, if you fear death or if you fear man, you don't have freedom of speech. So another reason why I'm saying this. Yep, I did not have the freedom to proclaim myself, to do what comes naturally for me to want to do, because I would get responses that would cultivate like shame, guilt, embarrassment, mocking, reviling, ridicule, curses, hatred, and violence. This was the response that I would receive when I would live, when I would exist, when I would be myself, when I would do what comes natural for me to do, when I would say what comes natural for me to say, when I would express my thoughts, when I would express my opinion, when I would, speak God's word, to do good, to speak good, to obey God with how he calls us to, how we are to use our mouth, our words, and our deeds. Doing that would result in this type of response. And these are all forms of judgment and oppression. People would judge me. And it's like that judgment, it's like it keeps you small, it keeps you oppressed, it keeps you limited. It puts restrictions on you so that you're not free to say certain things or do certain things. Rebecca, you can't hand out stickers. We told you, Rebecca, you can't hand out stickers with scripture on them. And then if I do it anyways, it's like you're unsubmissive. You're just so unsubmissive, Rebecca, for handing out. Why can't you just submit? You don't want to obey? It was that bad. It was just so crazy. People are weird. So I did not have the freedom to live. If you don't have the freedom of speech, you don't have the freedom to live, It keeps you oppressed. Yep, so all of the judgment, hatred, scrutiny, criticisms, it keeps you oppressed, it shrinks you, it restricts you in what you're able to do. And it's like with all of those, forms of judgment and oppression, it's like it's like my life was taken away. I wasn't able to do good, to bless people, to share, to be godly, to wear what I want, to whatever. Similar to how you don't have the freedom to own property due to the hatred. I saw an interview where it's like you sold all of your houses so that you don't, people judge you and you receive a lot of hatred and verbal assaults because you own property. So it's like in order, to not receive that, it's like you sold your houses and your property. If this is a cause for people to hate me and to receive these acts of violence, well, I'm not going to own property. So it's kind of similar. You don't have the freedom to own property due to the hatred that you receive from others and the judgment. No one sees the whole picture except for me and God of what I went through and what I endured. It was that bad. Those involved might dismiss it, labeling me as dramatic, to deny the truth that they contributed to what would have been Rebecca's murder. People want to dismiss it, if I speak accurately to how the level of suffering that it was that I experienced, if I speak accurately to that, it's like she's dramatic, she's exaggerating. There's no winning. There's really no winning. But it was that bad. And if people want to dismiss it, it's just so that they can avoid the reality that they made a contribution to what would have been like Rebecca's murder, what would have resulted in my death. Similar to how it's like when people talk about your past, it's like, oh, you were picked on as a kid, and it's like, no, I was beaten to the point of death. And it's, that's like murder. People want to dismiss their actions and say I'm exaggerating because it's like they don't want to acknowledge that their deeds, it's the equivalent of murder. And they don't want to grow and they don't want to learn from the past, and they don't want to accept, accountability and responsibility so that they can grow and move on and do things differently in the future. So if people want to dismiss it, that's on them. It's like they have to dismiss it because the alternative is they would have to acknowledge that they have a shared guilt in what would have been my murder and my death. So with Jesus's works, this is how Peter summarizes them. Of Jesus of Nazareth, how God anointed him with the Holy Spirit and with power, and how he went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him. So all of Jesus's works could be summarized by doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil. So healing the oppressed, well, restoring freedom of speech is a form of healing to those who are, those who are oppressed. So Jesus's works, it's like he healed the oppressed, and restoring freedom would fall in line to Jesus's works. That's a form of like healing the oppressed. Yep. And it's like for you to buy X and to fight for freedom of speech, to restore and maintain it, that's like in line with the works of Jesus and the will of Jesus and the heart of Jesus. That's in conformity to the works that Jesus did. So, yep. So why do I love Elon? Well, here's why I love Elon. His godly character, his Christ-like works, which he has already completed. I love him because of what he has already done. His Christ-like works, which are sacrificial works to save my life. For me, freedom of speech is a matter of life and death. When I was in a position where I couldn't speak, it was a matter of life and death for me. And even though your fight for free speech is in this different arena, well, it's for all of humanity, which I'm included in. So I see it as the same. Your sacrificial works, which you already did, which is in line with like saving my life. So that's why I love Elon. Also, his humor, that was a source of joy amidst my sufferings, and a means that God used to keep me from being overcome by grief and sorrow. I was in a season of suffering and grief and sorrow, and it's like in order to not succumb to that and be consumed by that, it's like, well, that finds favor in the sight of God. Like in order for God to balance the scales of unjust suffering, well, he pours out joy, to restore. And, one of the means of joy is, your humor on, the tweets and even that interaction about fighting Zuckerberg in the Roman Colosseum. So your humor that would come across, my social media feed, well, that was a means through which God administered joy to me and kept me alive. Also, he's tall and physically attractive. Yeah, I think he's 6'2", that's what it said, and I think he's physically attractive. If you don't think he's physically attractive, that's fine. You don't have to. Don't look at him. That's fine. You don't have to look at him. I think he's physically attractive, okay? And he's tall. Also, he has a good work ethic, and it appears that he is able to sufficiently provide for me. So these are all the reasons why I love Elon Musk. Like, okay, if at the beginning you thought, well, this is inappropriate, Rebecca, seeing this Like, what are the appropriate affections that I should have towards him? Like, how should I feel towards him? What are the appropriate affections? What is the appropriate way to make that known to him? Of, hey, I love you for what you're doing. It's meaningful to me. To me, it was a matter of life and death. And even though you're fighting in this arena over here, I love you for it. I love you for it. Yeah. So for all those reasons, well, that's why I love Elon Musk. Yeah. So that's the end of day 5. Encouragement for Elon. I love you. There was something else I was going to say, but then I forget. I hope I can still keep doing this job, working for Elon Musk. Every weekend, it's like, I don't want to have to go back on Monday. I would rather just work for Elon Musk. This is what I want to do, Elon. I want to do this. I want to work for Elon Musk. Doing what? Whatever it is he wants me to do, honestly, within reason. Within reason. I want to work for Elon Musk. So, I don't know. I haven't thought about what would happen if, like, it were to work out. I think that would probably, like, have a greater impact than, I think that would probably wreck my nervous system as, you know, more than if, like, he doesn't respond and I just kind of move on to do something else. I think him actually responding, yeah, I think that would be a greater yeah, I don't know how I would process it. I would probably touch his face a lot because I wouldn't think it was real. Probably touch his face a lot. But I don't know. Maybe day 6, I could make it from a different office. I could be reporting from a Cybertruck. Day 6 of working for Elon. I don't know. But that's the end of day 5, working for Elon. Encouragement, I love you. Maybe other people can be encouraged or emboldened to not have certain fears holding back them from saying what it is they want to say. So hopefully me pouring out my heart and soul in the presence of all towards this man that I've never met in person, of my undying love for him. If I could do it, you could do it. You could say what it is that you want to say. I don't think I'll die from it. It'll be okay. I'll be all right. If it doesn't work out, I don't think there's a level up from this. You know, at one point I thought frickin' Ryan Gromlovitz was like the end all be all. And then I was like, oh, maybe Shia LaBeouf. And it's like, yeah, he's the end all be all. But then it's like, it didn't work out. But then there's a level up. You know, if it doesn't work out, God is good. He knows you better than yourself. So it's like, if it doesn't work out with Elon, like, I can't fathom a level up, honestly. That would be like the total package of like godly character, proven godly character, intellect, physical attraction, humor. There's a lot of things that I enjoy talking about. I think intellect is important because it's like some things are really cool and bring you a lot of joy, and it's like people don't even have the framework to understand what it is that you find really cool, like frickin' fractals. So it's hard to... Part of the enjoyment is sharing. It's like in 1 John, the things that we've seen and heard, we proclaim to you so that you can have fellowship with us, and our joy is made complete, or something like that. It is a huge source of joy to delight in the things of God, and some things are kind of niche and bring joy to niche people, and it is kind of sad when there's not someone to like share in that joy, for you to like rejoice in those things together. So I think intellect is kind of a key component. So I don't know what a level up would be from Elon. Probably, if it didn't work out, I would just be celibate the rest of my days, however many days that is. I don't know, but I can't fathom a level up from Elon. Honestly, I don't think there'd be, I don't know Elon's value system, but just thinking rationally, I don't know what would be a better option for Elon. No offense to his partner. Sorry if this video makes you feel a certain way. I say sorry not because I'm guilty of anything or I think that I'm doing you wrong. I have no regrets. I would say it again, and I probably will say it again, hopefully, Lord willing. But I just acknowledge that this might leave you feeling a certain way, which is undesirable, feelings that are not enjoyable to feel. So my condolences if this leaves you in a state of unenjoyable feelings, leaves you feeling a certain way. Good news is, delight yourself in the Lord and He'll give you the desires of your heart. Maybe you thought Elon was like the end all be all, but it's like, maybe if you delight yourself in the Lord and you start doing good and you pledge your allegiance to the living God, He would bring someone else into your life, and you're like, you know what, this is my soulmate. Where it's like you thought Elon was the end all be all, but it's like, turns out you're thankful because then God brings this other guy in, around, whatever. I don't know you or what that partnership is. So maybe Elon's in love with her. I have no idea. But all I know is that when I Googled what's Elon's type, it was like me. So, but types change, so I don't know. Yeah, and if like it's, the feeling isn't mutual, well then maybe there'd be a new person, and then, looking back, I'd, convince myself that, Elon was, too rich. Elon was just too rich. It just wasn't a good match. He was too rich. Who knows? But God is good, so you should put your hope and trust in Him. I'm sorry if this is cringy and awkward. I just have to do it to get over, my fears of hindrances and barriers that would keep people from saying what it is they want to say. So this is also a portion for me and my growth as it is for Elon and wanting to do good to him. So, okay, thanks. I love you. Bye.